Hello and welcome back to 40 Minute Mentor, the podcast on a mission to raise aspirations and inspire the next generation of category defining founders, all in just 40 minutes. For the final episode of Series 12, we'll be looking back at the last 10 weeks of pocket sized mentorship, and I'll be sharing some of my favourite topics and moments. If you haven't fully caught up with the season yet, or you've just discovered the podcast, then this will be the perfect introduction to some of our latest episodes. As always, please don't forget to explore our archive, as we now have over 260 episodes available for you to download and enjoy. I can guarantee no matter where you are in your career or whatever stage of the founder journey you might be on, there will be something in here for everyone. But for now, let's revisit some of the best mentorship from the latest season. We've seen a really big trend in the last couple of years of founders stepping down from their CEO roles. No matter whether it's been brought on by COVID or going through really tough market conditions, the JBM team has been brought in to lead a number of succession hires over the last couple of years. And it's a trend I foresee continuing in 2025. This is also a topic we've covered this series from two different perspectives. Mary Bonza, founder of Flex Legal, exited her role as CEO and talked to me about how she knew the time was right to step aside and how her role has developed ever since. I also talked to Claire Jones, the ex-CCO of What Three Words and now CEO of Polar Steps, a Series A company. So she gives us a slightly different perspective of what it's like to be an incoming CEO and how to navigate that successful transition.
You also alluded to the fact that you stepped aside as CEO, I guess, 7 or so years into the journey. So how did you come to that decision? Because that's not an easy call for a founder to make. And I think it probably says a lot about your own self-awareness that you took the decision to step aside. So tell us a bit about that thought process. And again, what were the kind of crucial elements to you to ensure that that transition was a smooth one?
Yeah, it was definitely a hard decision because on one sense I was like, oh, is my ego going to get in the way here? And then I was like, no, you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are, you know what the company needs to take it to its next stage. And the skill sets that the company needs to take it to the next stage just isn't my strength. We needed better management, we needed more internal structure. And actually, it's been absolutely brilliant in a way because it sort of freed me up to be able to do the visionary bits, the entrepreneurial, getting things off the ground and trying things and continuing with the sales and spending time with clients. So it wasn't an easy decision, but it comes back to sort of what I said when we interview. You've got to put the company first, and companies at different stages need different things. And it's totally okay that you're not the right person to take it on to the next stage. And we've been so lucky again because our new CEO was internal. So she was our COO, and we interviewed about 80. Well, we shortlisted 85 people. We used a proper headhunter. We then brought kind of 5 people down to the wire, but she was brilliant. So she stepped up and is great.
That's awesome to hear. That's so good. And I guess for anyone listening to this that might be in a founder CEO role at the moment, but looking to kind of transition, what advice do you have for them going through that process?
I think really think about what your strengths are and what you enjoy and where you can add the most value to the company and get rid of your ego. And if you do that, you will come out with the right answer. I mean, it's everyone that really knows where their strengths lie, and actually just think about where you get energy from. So my energy is from spending time with clients, being out and about, getting something new off the ground. And actually, when a company gets to a certain size, it needs other things. It needs better structure. It needs better management. It needs all sorts of grown-up bureaucracy. And I think don't be scared. There's still a role for you. It's kind of make the role for you what you want it to be, which plays to all your strengths.
This was a really special group of people who had built something truly extraordinary, and it really, really is an extraordinary business, but also were able to be introspective enough and to say, you know what, there is a massive growth potential here, but we don't think we're the people to be in the leadership CEO role to take it forward. Now they're still in the leadership of the company. They're still involved as product founders. They get to build and do what they're incredible at, which is build this incredible product. But they wanted to bring someone in. And that's a really special thing, I think, which you don't always see. Sometimes at kind of series A, B, C stage, founders who maybe aren't perfectly suited to that next stage often stay, maybe when they shouldn't, or they haven't got the support to stay. And this was a really wonderful thing of founders saying, we are so excited about what this could be, and we'd like to bring someone in to complement and to work with us to do that. And so that was something really special. And then every moment after that I had a conversation with anyone in the team, I would come away being, wow, there's a word in a lot of those kind of culture books and things of talent density. The talent density of this company is so amazing that every person you walk into a room with, you come away with your brain exhausted because it's been so fun to talk to them and learn from them. And that is a really fun thing to get to do. And especially for me, I'd been at What 3 Words a long time. I was certainly excited about a new adventure, and to go and meet these people and just think, oh my goodness, I want to be like a sponge and just absorb everything that you all know.
I guess we've sort of alluded to the kind of how good the founders are and how self-aware they are to know to bring you in as CEO. But it's historically been, it's not always the easiest thing to take over from founders, and coming in as an incoming CEO when there's kind of, maybe when it's never been a CEO before, or just that it's just where the founders have currently been in that seat. So what has been your experience of working with the founders in these early months? And what advice do you have, or what do you think makes or breaks kind of a successful transition?
So another good example of this is that the founders have asked for help externally while planning this. So not just working with Eravina for the search, they also have been working with a lady called Anna, who is really experienced in tech and scale-ups and startups. And she actually helped them design my onboarding. So they were able to go out and say, you know what, we want some help with people who've done this before, who've successfully transitioned. So Max, who was the CEO and CTO and is now CTO, Max kind of did this really structured onboarding, which was amazing, and absolutely highly recommend doing structured onboarding, because for me, I just got to come in and be taught loads of things and get to sit with everyone and learn. And that was fantastic. But it was also a journey of kind of here's what the first few weeks, this is just going to be, okay, you don't need to do anything, you just need to learn and listen and absorb. And then over time, we've sort of had a real structured plan for handing over decision making. What's the point at which we're starting to say, okay, this is decision making handover? So I think a big thing is absolutely ask for advice and get input from people who've done this. Design with structure, that's definitely been it. But the biggest part of it with all the founders has been their openness and kindness to me, which is they understand that they have done this for nearly a decade. They know this business inside out, and I know absolutely nothing. So I don't know why decisions have been made, and they have been given me so much time and so much patience. And so, for example, one of the other founders, Kuhn, he is very focused on product, but he gives me 2 hours every week, and I just ask him questions and he just answers them. And it's one of the most valuable pieces, right? So I get to sit there and I just like, why do we do that? And why do we track this? And what does that metric mean? And can you show me that graph from 5 years ago? Because I need the history of the business to be able to understand going forward where we're going to go. So that's an example of it. The other thing is that they embraced me as a human being. So I've had to go and move countries for this job. So I'm spending most of my time now in Amsterdam, and all of them invited me to their homes. All the founders in the business invited me to have dinner with their families. And that seems like a small thing, but that is such a huge thing, because it is saying, we understand you are a human being who's coming on this journey with us, and we're embracing you. And so I got to have dinner with Max and his amazing family and meet his kids. And that was also a really important part of the onboarding, because it didn't make me just feel like I've just come to be a colleague. It made me feel like they care about me as a person and they want me to see their whole lives.
Hiring exceptional talent and building high-performing cultures are topics that I am particularly passionate about, but it's also a topic that comes up a lot with our 40-minute mentors. Following JBM's acquisition by Amplified People Group, I had to get on my new business partner and colleague, Andrew Richardson, to talk all about the elements of what makes a high-performing culture and how you can assess this in your hiring process.
Culture is your fuel for high performance, right? Like, that is really important. So understanding, for me, there's a kind of a step-by-step process founders need to really think about. One is, what is their view on what high performance is? And I don't think we talk enough about this. We don't talk enough about the defining of your own business, what high performance is and what you think high performance is. And just to bring that to light a little bit, it's like, are you very results focused? Are you like, high performance is achieving results? Is it impact, which is a bit more holistic? Is it behaviors? Is it these set of behaviors that make you high performing? And I don't think people do enough thinking about that early. And obviously it develops, it changes, that's fine. But right at the beginning, like really think about what high performance is and then fill your culture. Then your culture will define that, right? So you're like, okay, well, if you're incredibly results driven, your culture will be more around we go above and beyond to achieve our goals. We iterate to achieve our goals whenever we can, or that you can see the culture. If it's a bit more kind of, and I would relate Revolut's a 90% results focused culture, right? And they have some well documented issues with their culture because of it, but they've achieved what they've achieved. So you can't knock them for that. But if you're like a kind of health tech, biotech, where you've got really long feedback cycles, you might be being results focused is probably not where you want to be. You want to be more input focused, which is like more behavior focused, which is I can't think off the top of my head, but it might be we're relentless around finding our wins, or we're supported through really tough times. Like all of that sort of stuff is really important because it's going to be really long until you hit success. So you need to find small wins, and you need to support each other when there's dark days, because if anybody who's building a biotech or a health tech or deep will know it is tough and it takes years. And actually they're going down venture-backed route, which is definitely doesn't really understand biotech and deep tech, in my opinion. So one for me is like, let's really define what high performance is for your business. That should define your culture for your organization. And I don't think people think about that and talk about that enough. I think in regards to identifying high performers, obviously there's an alignment here with your culture. I've always believed that care and graft and hard work were the biggest indicators of performance. Like if someone loves what they do and works hard, they will go so far. Like I'm a massive believer in, and I don't mean by work hard, it can be often misconstrued as working long hours. I don't actually mean that. There's an intensity of how you work. There's a speed at which you work, which is just as valuable as, or even more valuable than working long hours.
Part of the reason why I started 40 Minute Mentor was to share a realistic view of what entrepreneurship really looks like. It shouldn't be just about sharing the big milestones, the huge valuations, the unicorn status, but actually being really honest about the challenges and lows along the way. Because sadly, there are many of them, but how you deal with those challenges are often the making of you. This season was no different. We celebrated lots of huge milestones with our 40 Minute Mentors, but we also had some hard-hitting and frank conversations about what it really takes to make it to the top. Here are two examples of that. The first one from Anna Sophie Hartvigsson, co-founder of Female Invest, telling you all about the intense roller coaster she's been on in the first couple of months of her business. And then you'll hear from Mary Beckett, CEO of YMU Group, sharing what it was like for her to rise quickly through the ranks in a very male-dominated industry, and hear some of her advice for any female leaders finding themselves in a similar situation.
So it was quite dramatic, actually, because when we eventually turned it into a business, no one really believed that we'd be able to scale, that we'd be able to monetize. But we turned it into a business and we went full time in January 2020. And we all know what happened shortly after. The world closed and we lost almost all of our revenue. And we were on the verge of bankruptcy within 3 months of having gone full time, which was very, very stressful. And I especially remember one episode where we were just sitting in the office. I was crying because we lost everything before it even started. And we closed down our computers. We went outside, we went for a walk and just talked about how we should announce the bankruptcy to the world. And I went home in the worst mood ever. And then the next day I wake up because my phone keeps ringing and I can see that it's Camilla, one of my co-founders, and I don't want to pick it up, but she keeps calling me. And eventually I pick up the phone and she tells me that Forbes has just shared us on their Facebook page because we are on the 30 list in finance. And I mean, then we just rushed back to the office because you can't declare bankruptcy the day after. And then we brainstormed on how to do this. And we decided to scale our online presence with, again, no money or anything. And we did that. And we actually ended up bootstrapping the business up to the first 10 full-time employees. We won the world's largest startup competition as well, got $100,000 equity free. And then we just went from there, fundraised after a year. So it really was very pure passion and very, very scrappy circumstances.
This episode is brought to you by Unleashed, the people and culture experts for leaders who do business differently. Trusted by the most progressive businesses, the Leadership Institute accredited Unleashed development programs harness the power of community learning, helping leaders develop skills, behaviours, and relationships they need to cultivate high performance across organizations. As a 40-Minute Mentor listener, you'll know firsthand the importance of leaders in high-performance culture. If your leaders aren't performing brilliantly, then your business won't either. Unleashed is part of the Amplified Group, the people services supergroup that supports tech companies from inception all the way to IPO. So if you want to find out more about Unleashed or any of the other Amplified Group services, then please get in touch on sayhello@unleashed.company. Now, back to today's 40-Minute Mentor.
I think there's so many limitations put on women in this industry. And I think that you have to really adopt a mindset where you are going to challenge that as you move forward. And so for me, I always had a sense of fearlessness as I kind of progressed through my career. And I was determined to push myself outside of my comfort zone, go and attend events, go and meet new people, go and send that email, go and create that opportunity. I felt that I had that. And to cultivate courage in circumstances which I might otherwise have shrunk from, I recognized that courage was going to be a big part of my ability to create opportunity for myself. And I think there's that famous quote by Anais Nin, which is, opportunity sort of grows in proportion to one's courage. I really believe that. I think you have to work incredibly hard. And I think I had to work really, really hard, having been part of such a small agency with such a big client base. So I think that was something that was good for me and pushed me forward. And I think having come through some of those experiences, I've never been complacent, ever, at any point in my career. I'm not complacent now, I never will be. I also think as well, as you start to interact with companies in different sectors, so the banking sector or venture capital, it is so male dominated. It's extraordinary that you end up often being the only woman in the room. That's an unusual experience. Being the only anything in the room is an unusual experience. And there's power and there's challenges that come with that. But you start to feel very othered as a result of that and recognize that your experience is different. I would also say, as well, as you acquire more power as a woman and you're somebody that's forthright and has an opinion, has to make decisions, right, that have consequences. Some men, not all men, some men really don't like that. They really don't like that. And they can express that in ways that make them more aggressive, potentially borderline threatening, etc., which is really interesting because you start to look at that dynamic and you say, okay, this is you really struggling with a woman being in that position, because what I'm saying is no different to what my male predecessor might have said, or another man, a man in the same position might have said, because it's coming from a woman, that's landed quite differently with certain men. And so I think there have definitely been challenges, and I've dealt with some very aggressive, difficult individuals as a result, I think, of my gender more than anything else. I would say stand in your power. You have earned the right to be in that organization by virtue of the fact that you are there. You will have gone through an interview process. You've been selected for a reason. So I would remind yourself of that. I would remind yourself that being different is valuable and makes you harder to replace. So actually embrace that difference and recognize that as a result of that difference, you're bringing something different to the party, something different to the table, and be confident in that. I would encourage anyone in those environments to cultivate courage and to think about how they can push themselves outside of their comfort zone. Because if you're going to progress in life, you're going to have to put your head above the parapet at some point. And if you do that, particularly as a woman, because people are harder on women, you will be judged, you will be criticized, but you need to persist. And in order to do that, you need to cultivate courage, in my opinion. So I think that's incredibly important. I think if you're particularly in a male-dominated environment and you want to find a way forward, I would find female mentors that have gone there before you, that you can reach out to and say, look, can I have a coffee? Can I talk to you about this? How did you do it? What were your experiences? 9 times out of 10, most people will give you time if you ask for it. And my last piece of advice is don't give up. Be resilient.
One of the most popular topics on the podcast is, of course, fundraising, especially in a challenging economic environment. This season, our 40-minute mentors have raised some exceptional amounts of money from top VCs as well as angels. So here are some of the experiences they shared and their advice for anyone currently going through the fundraising process.
I think fundraising, I know I said that we were able to close the round, but it was a real slog. It's been a real slog. And I think the economic landscape has not been kind to founders in the last couple of years. And then obviously being a female founder and a Black founder, it's hard not to internalize that you do have things stacked against you. But nevertheless, we've always pushed on. I've got very sharp elbows, and this process has taught me how much resilience and grit I actually do have, which is a lot. How to call on that strength to keep going day by day. And it's really hard when you're operating constantly in the unknown, not knowing whether things are going to come together. But I think holding on to that mission and vision, that's probably been the best thing and also the biggest challenge, but that's something that I've always tried to do.
Yeah, and huge kudos to you. It's so hard. It's been a really difficult year for founders to be fundraising. And as you say, the stats are just shocking, and particularly for female founders and for Black founders. And I know there's lots of great people out there trying to change this, and founders like yourself. And this is one of the reasons we really want to share these stories, because there are so many people out there that I think maybe just lose hope when it comes to this, and we really want to change that. What is your advice for anyone listening that might be struggling right now to raise? Have there been any tips that you would give them, or things that have worked for you about your experience when it comes to fundraising?
I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to fundraising, but one thing I will say is, a couple of things. I think firstly is never give up, believe in what you're doing and find the support that you need to keep that resilience going, keep the grit going, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So that's just one thing on the mindset. In a practical sense, I've always found that getting good at storytelling is a really big advantage when it comes to fundraising. I think that's something that people don't actually add enough weight to. I wish it was something that they talked about in schools even, because actually when you're a good storyteller, even when, whether you're in tech, whether you're fundraising or not, I feel like you can achieve so much because you can really bring people along and convince people of what you're saying and kind of inspire people to get on board with your mission and your vision, and everything else becomes a lot easier if you can tell a good cohesive story that makes sense. Being able to put that into a pitch deck, being able to put that into your own narrative and your own pitch, I think is something that all founders should really work on. And that's definitely something that I've worked on, and I have found it's been a big catalyst in us securing a number of competitions and winning all sorts of awards and things. Now, if you're able to stand up and really tell a good story, I think people really buy into that. So I think working on that is a big plus point for all founders.
I have more than 70% of equity in the business, which I think is unheard of for a lot of founders at our stage. And unfortunately, female founders are actually encouraged to give up more equity in the early stages, which I would have never agreed with, given my background in finance. It's not about the next round of funding. And I think there's a lot of short-termism, whatever you want to call it, myopia, when it comes to consumer tech and investing in these consumer businesses, which look sexy and, get a lot of hype in the early days. So you expect a quick exit and, a quick round to kind of, say, oh yeah, my investment in this company has gone 10x within 2 years. And it isn't like that. And I think that VC growth playbook strategy, I think it's completely dependent where, funding for consumer tech has gone completely dry. And in the UK, venture capital, when it comes to consumer, is not really venture capital. It's more private equity.
Yeah, exactly. I really love the fact that you have values aligned investors that really see what you're building and are there for the long haul.
I will say it helps that I have a very large majority in the business. They have to join on board my values. One of the things that I think is, often covered in media is, oh, I raised so many millions. And then the focus becomes on how do you raise millions? And that's the question that everyone's asking founders. And I'm like, actually, that shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be, what have you done after raising all that money? And also, how much have you had to give up? How do you protect not giving up so much of your company? And I think that is missing in discussion. Because often what happens, especially during tough times, is the founders who don't have much equity left in the business, they don't feel as connected to the business anymore. It's no longer worth their time.
there are some amazing mechanisms allowing people to put smaller checks in, like crowdfunding, or platforms like Odin, where you can put slightly bigger checks in and they all sort of roll up. So I think in terms of this strategy, I would definitely look at doing that as a first phase. People who know you, who back you, who are going to be like, yes, I know this person's got this. Then when you've got like a bit of cash behind you, then you start going to angel investors, but you have to be really targeted. Like there's no point just spamming everyone that has angel in their LinkedIn. Like you have to do your research. And then if you can like get introductions to angels, that will work so much better than cold emails, which I know is like really difficult when nobody knows who you are, but that's why going to founder events and trying to build connections is really important. Again, something I only learned like in the second round of funding. And then once you've got sort of all of your friends or first network on board, and then you've got more angels, if you feel it's right to get VCs in, then do. But VCs more than ever now are asking for a lot more. And so I'd question, like, is a VC the right time to bring on board? Like, are you really at the right stage to be having these conversations, or are you going to waste your time? And truthfully, like at the start, we spoke to a lot of VCs. We didn't even have a product, and we know that that is just not enough. So I would really just question, like, are you just going to be wasting your time speaking to VCs now? And actually, could that time be spent building a bit more traction and stuff? But, you know, for some people, maybe it is the right time. So that's what I would say. Be strategic and spend your time talking to the right angels and the right VCs, and don't just do a sort of spray and pray approach, because it just won't work. And it'd be really demoralizing.
Closely followed by fundraising questions, the other often requested topic we get from our audience is about transitioning into VC. And a big part of that is how to get a foot in the door. That's why we always run our VC feature series throughout the year, so you can learn about how best investors got into the industry and also hear their advice of what they are looking for when they're talking to founders. And this season, we got two absolute powerhouses from the world of VC on the show. Leah Sutton from Boulderton and Charlotte Van Rijk from Lightspeed share their perspectives on moving into VC and the importance of deep relationships.
That this is a long game. You mentioned misconception, and like full transparency, before I really delve deep, I think often people think on the outside that VC is about chasing the next big thing, finding the next big company that's going to go public, that's going to IPO, that's going to be acquired. But actually, it's not about making quick money. It's about the long game and requires a lot of patience. And it's about deep relationships, which is honestly why I love it, because I love relationship building and a real commitment to the founders to help them succeed. So I'd say that as Leah said, I get to know the funds. I'd be proactive. I think it's incredibly competitive, but I'd be proactive and really find the right fund that really leans into your strengths too. I think, as you said, like most VCs don't actually actively recruit and have open roles. So I think it's really on you. And I also think like really keeping a very open mind, but also like thinking about founders come first. If the founders are successful, the firm's successful. So that founder first mindset is absolutely critical.
That's great advice.
I just want to like add on the relationship thing. I mean, or emphasize rather, like it's not, when you think about, you'll talk about network, it's not about networking, it's about relationship building. And those are two very distinct things, right? You can meet someone and have a connection, but that is not a relationship. And I think it's not transactional. And I think that's super important to understand. So if like I have 1 million LinkedIn connections, but how many relationships do you have? And how do you think about your relationships it's absolutely paramount.
And that's everything from me today. I really hope you enjoyed Series 12 and today's trip down memory lane, featuring some of my best bits from this series. As I said earlier, don't forget to check out the full episodes if you enjoyed the sound of them. And of course, look back through the archive when you get a chance. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what your favourite episode has been in 2024, so make sure you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or post about the podcast on LinkedIn, tagging myself and JBM. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again next week for even more pocket-sized mentorship.